useless.
The bank notification arrived while I was still at my desk. A deposit confirmation with Marcus Hale's name stamped across the top. Guilt hit me in the ribs before I finished reading the number. I didn't know why, only that my hands went cold and my pen stopped tapping. The alert showed a year-end bonus cleared into my account, a sum I could not explain. The problem was not the money. The problem was a name I kept trying to fold into my mental drawer labeled missing. I stood up with the phone in my palm and the light from the screen carving a tiny rectangle on the polished wood. I opened Marcus' personnel file on the intranet before I left my chair. The office hummed half empty, lights sliding off in rows as janitors moved down the floors. I clicked through dates and approval stamps while the notification sat on the corner of my monitor like an accusation. Suspicion pushed me forward. Suspicion that this was an error. Suspicion that it was deliberate, suspicion that someone had tried to erase Marcus by redirecting what was rightfully his. Those suspicions shaped each decision I made that night. I copied the bonus transaction line, printed a personnel summary, and slid the pages into my worn leather satchel. I walked toward the workstation row. Even Ruiz was still at his terminal 2 desks down, neck craned over a spreadsheet as if numbers could hold up the night. Even, I said. Did you see a bonus post to my account under Marcus Hale? I left the question short because the sound of it made the hallway feel narrower. Even looked over, pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose, and said, Marcus. That's months ago. Marcus disappeared last spring. Why would a bonus go to you now? He swiveled his chair and tapped at his screen. Pull up the ledger. We worked in silence for 3 minutes, each of us focused on different halves of the intranet. I narrated aloud because speaking steadied me. Transaction IDN 4271. Posted tonight at 2200 hours. Origin ledger. Year-end bonuses. Approver. Listed as Julian Mercer on electronic sign. Off. I tapped the printed transaction with my finger. The paper left a faint grease mark on my fingertip. Even Julian signed that. That's odd. Julian doesn't he approve junior analyst bonuses without her? Someone toggled the account. His voice tightened. Claire. This looks like reallocation. I pushed away from the desk and walked to Marcus' cubicle. The cube had been untouched since the firm issued a missing person note months back. His mug still stood with a dried ring inside. His chair faced an empty window. I ran my fingers along the edge of his desk and found a torn page shoved under a stack of old invoices. I unfolded it and saw Marcus' handwriting, small, slanted corrections in ink and a partial numeric code written in the margin. My mouth filled with something I couldn't name. When I touched the number, my fingertips smelled faintly of cedar and cigarette ash. Marcus sent. I remembered as if memory were a ledger I could open and close. Tension rose as I slid the page into my satchel. I felt the office pulse with the late night cleaning crew below and the soft clack of elevators. I sent a quiet message to Tanya Cole in her. Can you meet me? I need to check a personnel record, urgent. I wrote it without saying why. If Julian saw the message timestamped later, he could argue curiosity. Tanya replied within 5 minutes. In 10, lock the door. I moved toward the partner corridor. Julian's office door was closed but not locked. The corridor smelled of shoe polish and the faint metallic tang of the day, before coffee in the vending machine. I knocked once and pushed the door open. Julian Mercer was behind his desk, sleeves rolled to the elbow of his bespoke shirt, tying a tie pinned to a folder with a slow, controlled motion. Claire. Julian in his reserved baritone this late. He did not stand. He steepled his fingers and watched me as if measuring whether I belonged in the frame. I put the torn page on his desk without ceremony. Julian, I found this at Marcus' desk. A bonus posted to my account tonight with Marcus Hale's name on it. The intranet shows your approval. I did not allow my suspicion to be a question. Julian's expression hardened the way glass does when someone adds pressure. Problems involving personnel are sensitive. Claire. Drop it, he tapped the paper with the tip of his finger. Marcus' matter is closed in the firm's public file. We can reopen funerals or disappearances. The image matters. His voice was even, but I heard the click of a mechanism shifting toward containment. I felt my pulse tighten. Julian, that's more than an image. A bonus was redirected. I put my hand flat on the desk. People will notice. Marcus had a beneficiary. My mouth said the words beneficiary, because they showed legal consequences. Julian inhaled slowly. Leave it to her. Tanya will handle any reconciliation. He did not sound reassuring. Tanya arrived with the badge scanner bleating against her lanyard. She was brisk, a woman who kept her worry in hard places. Claire, show me, she said. She took the torn page and compared it to a printout on Marcus' file. She frowned. This code, she read aloud, matches an internal memo I am not supposed to see. Claire, if this ties to transfers after Marcus disappeared, we will need to escalate carefully. Julian, she glanced at him, we can let this leak. Reputation, Julian's jaw didn't move. Tanya, assess and lock. Claire, you should not copy memos. Leave this with her for the firm's protection. His tone carried the kind of protection that presses a hand over a wound and refuses to let anyone look. I left Julian's office with my satchel heavier for the printed pages tucked inside. The corridor light buzzed overhead. I thought of Marcus' smile in the break room the week he left, of the way he fiddled with a cuff when he was nervous. I felt guilt again, sharp and physical, and it pushed me toward a choice I could not unmake that night. I drove to her meeting room instead of leaving the matter to them. Tanya had the door locked when I knocked. She opened it a fraction and then widened her face into an expression that was close to resignation. Inside, the room smelled of disinfectant and paper. A single lamp over the table put the rest of the room into soft shadow. Julian was already in the chair at the head of the table, the memo on the table in front of him like evidence. He did not ask me to sit. Tanya slid a sealed envelope across the table. This came from Central Accounting 2 months ago, she said. It shows the year. And bonus pool was relocated after Marcus' disappearance. She tapped a printed line. See the reference code. It matches Marcus' notebook partial. Her finger landed on the same sequence of numbers I had seen. Julian watched me while Tanya spoke. We authorized relocation to preserve operational stability. Temporary adjustments were coded. It was standard practice for unresolved personnel files. He did not meet my eyes. Claire, you should not have accessed Marcus' desk or copied this. His voice had the calm of someone explaining procedure to a subordinate. I pushed the envelope toward me. Julian, the code is in Marcus' handwriting. That is not a generic relocation. Marcus knew about the ledger line. Someone changed the entries after he left. My voice went hard. I folded my hands over the envelope to keep them from shaking. Julian's next line landed like a measured pause. You are young, Claire. There are things you don't know about the firm. Walk away. He used the firm's name as if it were a shield. The room changed the moment Tanya slid a second printout toward me. An internal memo with Julian's initials beside a timestamp. Julian, this shows approval. Your initials are on it. Tanya's voice had an edge now. She folded her arms. I didn't want to see it, but accounting flagged the transfer as sensitive and included her on a need to know basis. We are on a need to know list. She looked at Julian, then at me. Claire, we need to know who authorized the relocation and why. If Marcus' name was attached and someone moved the funds, that's not routine. Her eyes held mine like a ledger demanding reconciliation. Julian steepled his fingers. There are more pressing concerns about client exposure. Marcus' disappearance is delicate. The firm is protected. Drop this, Claire. He did not threaten with words. He offered containment. Tension rose inside me like bad coffee at the back of the throat. An alarm sounded outside the door as someone tried to enter the floor. The security officer's radio crackled. Tanya's shoulders tightened. I can let this go. Julian, I said. Not when Marcus' handwriting is on the code and his name sits on my deposit slip. I remembered the number on my bank notification again, and the way it looked when the digits gleamed on my screen. Julian's face did not change. If you pursue this, there are consequences you must accept, Claire. For your career, for your security. He named the trade-offs with the deliberate calm of a man who had weighed them long ago. You're gambling your place here on an unsolved absence. Are you willing to lose this job for what is essentially a rumor? The word rumor, like a gavel. My hands found the torn page in my satchel. I unfolded it and read the partial code aloud. This is not a rumor to Marcus' notebook, I said. Someone redirected a payment or hid a reference with his name. Marcus may have been trying to follow the money. The sentence floated in the room and landed on Julian's suit. An unexpected thing happened. Tanya looked at Julian with a measure of private annoyance. Julian, if the code is in Marcus' hand and accounting shows your initials, we have more than a rumor. We have a concrete chain. I'm not comfortable burying that. She pushed the memo back toward him. We have a duty to the staff. Marcus' family deserves answers. Her voice tightened, as if she were tapping a wound that would not stop bleeding. Julian's measured breathing didn't break, but his eyes narrowed. Tanya, you're risking the firm's stability. Claire, I will say this once. Hand this to her protocol. You have crossed a line by copying documents. If this grows, it will damage more than your reputation. He pushed the envelope back. The message was clear. Drop the matter or accept fallout. I left the room with copied pages in my bag and a printout of the memo tucked under my arm. The elevator lobby smelled faintly of ozone. The security officer at the desk asked to see my badge. I explained I was closing out a report and slipped past with a strained smile. Ivan met me at the exit, his breath visible in the night air. Claire, you look like someone moved your last piece of furniture. Ivan, Julian knows, I said. He signed the memo. Tanya thinks it ties to Marcus' notebook. I have the torn page. My voice was low, but he told me to stop. I could feel fear then, an emotion shift from suspicion to fear, as the weight of the firm's authority pressed at my shoulders. Ivan's hand went to his phone. We shouldn't leave this here. Marcus' desk had that page, Claire. He might have left it on purpose. He frowned. We need proof beyond a page. Did you copy the ledger lines? His tone was practical, precise. I showed him the printouts. I copied the memo. I took a photo of the intranet line. The light from his phone made a ghost of my face. We need to trace where the money went. If Marcus had a beneficiary, if someone rerouted his bonus, that is a crime. Julian knows that. My speech shortened. Anxiety tightened each syllable. At that moment the garage door of the building clanged and closed. A group of late shift employees streamed past us, oblivious. I slid into my car and sat with the engine off, fingers on the steering wheel. The torn page from Marcus' desk lay on the passenger seat like an accusation. I read the handwriting again and felt something like resolve forming. The emotion that had driven my actions shifted. Suspicion had become determination. I would not let Marcus' ledger entry be buried. I drove home slowly, lights of the city cutting white and gold through the rain, smeared windshield. The torn code replayed in my mind. I knew I was choosing a path that could cost me a job. I also knew Marcus' handwriting did not belong in my bank statement. That small, specific fact sat inside me and would not be dismissed by Julian's measured voice. At my apartment, I placed the printed memos on the kitchen table and laid Marcus' notebook page beside them. The room smelled of instant coffee and the faint soap from my last load of laundry. I made coffee without thinking and listened to the night as if it were a ledger making notes. I opened the firm intranet again and followed the ledger entries line by line until a pattern emerged. Relocated accounts, timestamps, a trail of internal notes with a recurring partial number matching Marcus' page. I called Ivan. Meet me at Marcus' desk at dawn. We need to take another look before Julian cleans everything. My voice was steady. He agreed. We made a plan. There was no dramatic promise or speech, only two colleagues arranging a morning stakeout. I slept for an hour and dreamed of numbers, awake to the weight of the folder beside the bed. When the alarm went off, I dressed in navy and cream, grabbed my satchel, and headed back downtown while the city still smelled of rain. The lobby felt different at dawn. Cleaners folded chairs, a barista set out pastries, and Julian's office lights remained on. I moved quickly, heart rate steady, fear turned into focused action, another emotion shift from fear to clarity. At Marcus' cubicle, Ivan and I pieced together details. We found a second torn ledger under a keyboard, a list of client codes with one entry circled by hand and the partial number scrawled next to it. Claire, look, even. That circle matches Marcus' corrections. This isn't random. He tapped the circle with urgency. Someone rerouted funds through a shell reference. Marcus is the only one who marked it. His sentences were short, like punctures. A van parked below the window. Someone walked by on the sidewalk with a delivery box. The building's motion felt indifferent to our discovery. I thumbed the page open and read Marcus' note aloud. If transfers hide in code, follow code to source, I said. I felt close to Marcus then, closer than Julian allowed in his measured distance. He suspected ledger corruption. I pushed the printouts back into my satchel. We resolved to copy files to a secure drive and take them to an external auditor if necessary. Ivan, if Julian is on the memo, we are going to need someone outside the firm. This goes beyond her. He looked at me. Claire, are you ready for that? The question was concrete, not sentimental. I nodded. Yes, I'm ready to risk the job if it means Marcus' notebook wasn't ignored. I felt the muscles in my jaw unclench. The decision was made by action, not by speech. As we left Marcus' safe floor, security stopped us after hours access. The guard asked. I handed over a cover story about ledger reconciliation. The guard scanned our badges. He did not look at our faces long enough to see fear. We slipped past. In the stairwell, we heard the faint click of the partner corridor. Julian's silhouette appeared through the corridor glass, a slow motion toward the elevator. He did not look surprised to see us. Instead, he watched us with a calm that said he expected the world to follow his script. I met his eyes long enough to know we were no longer in separate rooms. We all inhabited the same compressed present. Julian stopped us at the elevator bank. Claire, even, he said, you should not be handling personal matters. Hand over any copies to her. His voice was the same as before, controlled, final. I held up the thumb drive. Julian, I'm keeping this. Marcus' handwriting is on that table. Your memo shows your initials. If you want to investigate, I will. My voice did not shake. He studied me with the careful interest of someone watching a small problem that might become a larger one. If you continue on this course, you understand the consequences. Claire, his words were not a threat but a legal fact. Even put a hand on my shoulder. Claire, let's take this where it belongs. Not here. He guided me toward the stairs. Julian watched us go. We left the building carrying photocopies and a shred of understanding about Marcus that shifted the case for everyone who touched it. I folded the torn ledger page into my pocket before we reached the sidewalk. The page felt thin and ordinary in my palm, but it had altered the night's gravity. I got into my car and started the engine. The final concrete beat arrived as my phone buzzed with an unknown number. A text reading only 3 words from an unlisted contact. Stop digging, Claire. I read it twice, mouth dry. I folded the torn ledger page into my pocket and started the engine. I slipped back into the glass-walled trading bay after hours and forced Marcus' locked drawer open. Feeling a fresh spike of suspicion when the brass key clicks and an envelope slides free with his name penciled across the flap. Suspicion moved my hands before my head finished cataloging the risk. I understood then why the deposit notification that landed in my inbox 2 nights earlier had made my stomach go cold. The bank message had carried Marcus Hale's name and a number that matched the deposit in my account. That wrong bonus still sat in my bank, but the ledger in my hand suggested the transfer had not been accidental. I tugged the envelope open with the pad of my thumb. Inside is a single stub of a printed ledger and a folded payroll confirmation. The stub shows Marcus' employee number and, in a different font, a manual routing code stamped with a small initial that looks like Julian's. I look at the stamp, then at the desk. A coffee ring, a cluster of post-its with a few formulas scribbled, a thin line of dried pencil on Marcus' stapler. I fold my hands around the paper until the edges bite my fingers. Guilt arrives next, a physical tightening across my ribs. I touched the deposit by accident, but I have the documents now. I have responsibility on them. I slide the ledger stub into my pocket and push the drawer closed. The bay is empty except for the city lights blinking through the glass. The fluorescent strip over Marcus' workstation hums like a small animal. I stand with my shoulder against his cubicle wall and listen for the building's circulation system, the only sound that proves I am still alone. My watch reads 22:45. I should have left an hour ago. I did not. My phone buzzes with a silent notification and I let it screen the message. A calendar reminder for Monday's payroll meeting. Monday. The thought of Monday tightens my jaw. I bring the ledger stub to my lips and breathe against my teeth. Doubt shifts under my skin. Do I hand this to Julian and risk him bearing it? Do I go to payroll and force the clerk to show me the authorization chain? I weigh the pragmatic against the moral like two small coins. I leave Marcus' drawer the way I found it and head for the elevator. Halfway down the corridor, I stop and crouch by his locker. The locker lock is warm, still holding a trace of the hand that used it last. I pry the latch and pull out a worn notebook with a frayed spine. Marcus' handwriting is small and angled. The page I open contains a penciled sequence that repeats a partial numeric set. I run my thumb across the numbers until one matches the faint code at the edge of his wrist tattoo I remember from the break room. The page ends with a single line written in block capitals, "Walk away." I close the notebook and stand up so fast my knee protests. The emotion inside me roils. Suspicion into steady concern into a silent, tremulous fear. I keep the notebook tucked into my coat and step into the stairwell. At the door I almost laugh at myself for carrying evidence like contraband, but the laugh dies. If Julian recognizes that initial anywhere, nothing about Marcus' disappearance looks accidental anymore. Morning returns with fluorescent glare and the clatter of keyboards. I find Pryor, the payroll clerk, bent over a screen, her desk ringed with tea mugs and a ceramic plant that welts like slow surrender. I plant myself at the edge of her cube and hold the ledger stub out, palm open. "Pryor," I say, "how did a manual override get entered for Marcus?" Pryor lifts her head. "Claire, you can just..." Her voice tightens. Pryor has always worn her hair in a tight bun and a ring of concern around her mouth when she handles payroll exceptions. Today the concern looks sharper. I can see the entry, but I can show authorization without senior sign-off. It's flagged. Julian signed off on the protocol in box 12. Julian signed off, I repeat, tapping the stub. Julian Mercer, yes. Julian Mercer. Pryor's eyes flicked to me. I can pull the routing, but human resources will only release the full trail with a legitimate request. You know the drill. She slides the ledger stub back toward me. You should talk to him. I feel anger prick then. A bright sting at the back of my throat that makes me breathe faster. Anger shifts me from suspicion to something more impatient. Pryor, this wasn't a simple redirect. The deposit landed in my account. Show me the override. Pryor shakes her head. Claire, I can tea. Julian's chair in that meeting sits heavy. He let it out of his office. The exchange ends with me holding a photocopy of the stub and a doubled sense of resolve. I move to Julian's floor and let security buzz my name. The elevator doors open on a corridor trimmed in muted gold. Julian's door sits at the end like a decision point. Julian's assistant leads me through the corner office and closes the door after me. Julian sits behind the desk with his fingers steepled. He wears the precise suit he always wears and an expression like carved stone. Claire, he says, naming me the way a judge notes a case. You found something. Sit. I set the ledger stub and Marcus' notebook on the desk and fold my hands over them. How did the bonus get routed to my account? The payroll printout shows a manual override with your initial. Julian's shoulders stay steady. There are personnel matters that cannot, in good faith, be aired in an open channel. Marcus was flagged for compliance months ago. We created a routing to hold funds pending an inquiry. That routing was imperfect. We are correcting it to my bank. I say I did not authorize anything. The deposit is in my account. Julian leans forward. Claire, this is delicate. Asking the wrong person the wrong question can cause reputational damage. For the firm's sake, let this be settled administratively. Leave it alone. His tone is soft, but there is an edge beneath that makes the muscles in my jaw clench. I feel fear then, a sudden, cold squeeze that makes me press my fingertips to the ledger. Fear shifts me away from quick anger and toward measured caution. Julian, I didn't ask for this money. I can ignore that a colleague's pay was redirected without his consent. If Marcus is gone, I need to know why. Julian's eyes narrow. Marcus's matters are internal. If you publicize this, you endanger client trust and employee confidentiality. He pauses, and the pause stretches until I feel my pulse in my throat. Accept the deposit as settled, Claire. Walk away and your career remains intact. The words land like a threat disguised as an offer. I push the notebook forward. Julian, he left this in his locker. He wrote walk away. He wrote a sequence matching the tattoo on his wrist. This isn't just payroll glitch work. For the first time the veneer cracks. Julian slams his palm onto the desk. The sound reverberates through the office glass like a struck plate. Enough, he says. Security, please escort Ms. Bennett to the lobby. The room closes around me. Julian's voice becomes an instruction and the office door moves like a trap. My breathing accelerates. My hands go slick. I reach for the ledger and the notebook without thinking. Julian, you can I stop because the word sounds useless. A guard appears in the doorway with a badge and a jaw that suggests obedience. He does not smile. I pivot toward the window and catch my reflection in the glass. Pale, a smear of pencil on my thumb. Sophia's voice appears behind my shoulder like someone pulling a thread. Claire, here. Sophia Park stands framed in the doorway with a coffee cup she always balances like an offering. Sophia has worked in the support team for 3 years and keeps her hair clipped in a practical bob. She lifts a hand and nods toward a sliver of space near the service stairwell. This way, I step. The guard's attention flicks to Julian's desk. He hesitates for a fraction, long enough for Sophia to close the distance between me and the service door. She slides a phone across the gap to me and whispers, "Photograph everything." Now her voice is close and hard. Julian, want to lock this down forever? We work in a sequence. Sophia blocks the guard with a casual question about a meeting. I angle my phone and photograph the ledger stub, Marcus S. folded page, the payroll confirmation. Each shutter click feels like a small rebellion. The guard's eyes flick to us and then back to Julian. I tuck my phone into my coat. Sophia steps back and offers a laugh that does not reach her eyes. You okay, Claire? That looked rough. I force a smile and feel trimmer in my fingers. The ledger and notebook sit in my coat now, copies stored in an encrypted folder on a drive I did not yet have. I need a copy I can take out of the building. I glance at Julian. He speaks again, measured, but his voice is louder this time. Security, make chemise. Bennett leaves. Sophia squares her shoulders. Let's go then. I'll see you downstairs. She moves to the stairwell and I follow. The stairwell smells of concrete and bleach, and the kind of silence that holds its breath. In the dim service alcove, a junior security guard nods at Sophia and chats about overtime as if nothing is wrong. He is young and tired. His name badge reads Tom. Sophia places herself between Tom and the stairwell door and leans close enough that his attention slides to the clipboard in her hand. Tom glances down. I drop my bag under the stairwell bench and slip in an encrypted drive I had connected earlier to my phone. I feel my heart beat sharp. Sophia jabs the guard with a question about badge access, and Tom's face dips into consultation mode. He answers. His voice slows. He folds the conversation into a complaint about the coffee machine. I move while he is distracted. I slide my hand under the bench, find a seam in the ply, and pull out a second envelope that Sophia had palmed. She had come prepared. She hands it to me. The envelope holds 2 printed pages of payroll routing and a photocopy of an half flag with dates. I slip both into my coat pocket and return the drive to where no one would expect it. When Tom looks up, we are leaving. He waves at us with the clipped indifference of someone who has been asked to clear a hallway. Outside, the winter light has thinned to a faint brass. I catch my breath and count the changes in my mood. Suspicion, anger, fear, and then a kind of careful resolve that clicks into place when I realize I have fuel for action. The ledger shows a manual override with Julian's initial. The notebook hints Marcus intended to leave. The half flag suggests a compliance review had him in its sights. These are pieces of a pattern that do not point at accident. We go to the printer room in the west wing where Sophia has a key. She props the door open with her shoe and feeds the copies through the scanner, while I watch the corridor for anyone tailing us. The printed pages emerge with a hard mechanical rasp, and I feel the air shift inside me. Clarity. Clarity is not relief. It is the removal of fog that lets a shape resolve. The half-flag lists dates, a notation about a provisional freeze, and a routing instruction that authorized funds to be held pending inquiry. On the document, a stamped line reads "Administrative Hold, authorized by J. Mercer." I read the stamp aloud. Julian Mercer. Sophia folds the papers and hands them to me. "You wanted the truth, Claire. You want to walk this out public, or you want to take it to compliance outside the firm." Her voice is steady and small, like someone testing a rope for strength. I think about Peril, about Pryor, and the way she shuffled her hands away when I asked for authorization. I think about Marcus's notebook and the scroll "Walk away." I think about Julian slamming his palm and a guard stepping forward. One decision presses against another under the skin. I can tan this back to Julian. I say, he will bury it. He already tried. The firm will bury Marcus if it helps them sleep. Sophia taps the scanner with the pad of her finger. Then you need outside pressure. Media. Compliance at the regulator. She names options like a strategist laying out a map. I picture Marcus' face from the break room, the tired tilt of his mouth when he laughed. Not yet. I say, I need proof. I can carry outside this building. Copies the firm can trace back to me. Sophia nods. Okay, we split duties. I distract her. You secure the electronic trail. We move like a small team with a purpose. Sophia takes the photocopies and slips back toward the high-glass conference room. She has a way of walking in like she belonged there, planting herself by the open door. I go to the alcove and ask the junior technician for a favor. A temporary readout of recent access logs. He is young and wary. His name tag says Ben. I ask in the tone of someone who owes him a future favor. Ben opens a session and scrolls. He frowns. There's a flagged action here, he says. An administrative override entered by internal credentials and routed through a corporate admin channel. But the request originated from an admin terminal that usually sits in Julian's office. That tiny confirmation feels like a lever. My hands shake slightly when I save the log to the encrypted drive. Ben watches my hand. Claire, you sure about this? Ben, please. Just save it to this. I hand him the drive with my own fingers, and he nods, eyes reflecting the scanner's blue light. He is careful and precise. He does not ask why. He is a secondary actor who changes the course of this moment by providing the electronic proof I need. We reconvene with Sophia in the stairwell. Her face is pale in the stairwell light. Evelyn pulled a thread in her and found a compliance flag. She says she didn't want to show me. But she did say something that matters. There was an administrative routing to freeze or reroute funds tied to Marcus. Evelyn's name lands like a confirmation. I realize then that the story has grown teeth. Two people outside my immediate circle have supplied evidence that Julian was in motion. I press the drive into my palm and feel the weight of what I carry. I have the ledger photos, Marcus' notebook, the her flag photocopy, and now the access logs. The shape of a truth begins to assemble. We plan a small exit. Sophia will take the copies to a friend in compliance at a rival firm. I will hold the electronic files and decide whether to escalate to the regulator or to a reporter. The decision hangs heavy. If I go public, I destroy my career within the firm. If I do nothing, Marcus remains a name in a ledger and an empty chair by the east window. We walk toward the service stairs. The plan is quiet and efficient until Julian's voice stops it in its tracks. The stairwell door is a single panel from the hallway and it opens before we reach it. Two security guards stand there, one older and severe, one younger and uncertain. Julian is behind them, his coat over his arm and his jaw tight. Ms. Bennett, he says, we need to retrieve that property. Sophia holds the stack of papers like a shield. The older guard steps forward and says, Ma'am, we need to ask you to come with us. I swallow. My heart hits against my ribs. Outside a window, a delivery truck backs up with a metallic clank. An elevator dings. These external noises feel like a drumbeat that insists action. For a moment, everything compresses. Choices lined up like dominoes. I make a move. I tuck the drive under my arm and step sideways toward the darker stairwell, toward a route with fewer witnesses. The young guard lunges. I move faster. Sophia pushes at the older guard with a blunt shoulder, a human wedge. The older guard swears and reaches. Tom, the junior guard from earlier, hesitates. He looks at Julian and then at me. The hesitation lasts 1 second, and in that second I seize the stairwell door, drop into the concrete stair, and close it behind me. We run down 4 flights with the small echo of our breath. We stop on a landing and lean against the cold wall. My hands are shaking hard enough to make the keys of the drive rattle. Sophia's sweatshirt smells faintly of coffee and peppermint. I open the drive and check the files. Photos of the ledger, scanned copies, the photocopy, the access logs. Each file is a small, heavy fact. I say nothing for a beat. In that silence, emotion changes again. Fear ripples into resolve. I fold the plan in my head until it fits the facts we have. I will not walk these files back into Julian's office. I will not hand them to Har and Hope. I will get them to people outside the firm who can force a formal inquiry. Sophia leans close. Claire, what now? She asks. We leave the building separately tonight, and we meet at a coffee shop across the river in 3 hours. I say you take the photocopies to your contact. I hold the drive. If anything happens to me, you release them. Sophia nods and presses the hand with the photocopies into my palm for a brief second. Be careful. Claire, we part at the service exit. I go a different route, keeping a low profile and a path that avoids the lobby. The city smells like dust and exhaust. My legs feel like rubber under the pressure of the decision. I step into the night and let the cool press against my face. In the stairwell landing, I pause and check the drive once more. The files are intact. I fold the notebook from Marcus into my coat and close my fingers over it like it is a promise I must keep. Down at the curb, I pause again and look back toward the office tower, glass like a grid of small rooms, some lit, some dark. Inside, Julian sits behind his desk with a measured voice. Outside, I hold evidence that unravels his control. A car door closes and a man laughs in the distance. I put my satchel on my shoulder and step into the city. I feel a different kind of fear now, anticipatory, like waiting for a door to open. My phone buzzes with an old message from Priya asking whether I'm okay. I type back, I'll be fine. I do not send copies yet. I walk away holding proof and a decision that will require more than courage to see through. At the corner, a van idles with 2 men. One of them turns his head toward me for a single beat. I feel the hair rise along the back of my neck. I move faster, my breath catches. I fold the drive inside my satchel so the case sits against my ribs. The city swallows me in its noise. I reach the coffee shop 3 hours later and slide into a booth. Sophia arrives minutes after and slides a cream folder across the table. She sets it down, and the folder looks ordinary and deadly. I open my bag and lay the drive on top. We both breathe as if we've been underwater. Sophia meets my eyes. You ready? She asks. I close my hands slowly over the drive and feel its cold casing. My voice is small when it comes. Yes, I say, but I need one more thing. I need someone who can move faster than we can. Someone outside this building who doesn't owe Julian anything. Sophia taps the folder. I have a contact at a compliance shop. She owes me a favor. I can hand these over tonight and she can push them to the regulator. The plan is simple enough to drown in complexity. We agree on names, times, fail safes. We set a contingency. If I do not answer by midnight, Sophia calls the contact and releases the copies. We sign off with a handshake that is more like a vow. When I walk home, the drive sits heavy in my satchel, and Marcus's notebook presses flat against my spine. I think about the bank notification that had arrived at my desk, the wrong bonus showing Marcus's name and my account number. I think about Priya's guarded face, Ben's quick fingers, Evelyn's quiet pull, and Sophia's steady jaw. I think about Julian's palm on the desk and the way the office door had shut like a seal. At my front steps, I pause and take a breath that feels like preparing for a long swim. The stairwell behind me holds the memory of the slam and the guard's approach. Ahead, the city is indifferent. I push the door open and step into the warmth of the building lobby. I have evidence. I have a plan. I have people who will act. I pressed the encrypted drive to the inside pocket of my satchel and listened for the push of a stairwell door. Footsteps answer before I can decide whether to leave or to broadcast everything. I stepped into the glass conference room and Julian had Marcus' sealed payroll envelope on the table before I could close the door. Guilt tightened my throat the instant my palm hovered over the handle. That guilt pushed me forward into the room instead of back out into the trading bay. Julian's face did not move when he said, "You opened his drawer, Claire. Explain." The accusation landed like a hard ledger entry. The central problem was immediate and visible. A misdirected bonus, a missing colleague, and now an envelope that tied me to both. I had been at my desk when the bank notification arrived 2 chapters ago. I had felt the number in my account before I had the name. That earlier moment, the wrong bonus arriving while I keyed a late reconciliation, matters now because it was the first place the firm's bookkeeping and the firm's silence collided. I pushed my satchel strap higher on my shoulder and kept my voice steady. "I found the envelope," I said. "I opened his drawer because the bonus showed with his name." Julian's eyes narrowed, but he did not stand. Julian tapped the envelope with one careful finger. "This belongs to Marcus Hale." "You put yourself in the middle of a personnel issue." "Why, Claire?" My pens habitually tapped on the desk, even when I tried not to let them. Tonight the tapping was in my hands, not the room. Suspicion moved through me, first that someone had made an accounting error, then that someone had rearranged records to hide a trail. I answered with facts, not philosophy. The deposit notification listed Marcus. The payroll file had his name. I thought it was an error, so I checked his drawer. Julian leaned forward. "You forced a locked drawer open. That was accusation 2. Julian's voice dropped, and he made a slow calculation. "You understand what exposing personnel issues does to partners and clients?" The firm's name as if it were a fragile crystal. His warning shaped the stakes. Keep quiet, accept the firm decision, and your career remains intact. Press, and you risk a scandal pinned on you. The tension shifted in my chest. Guilt bent into fear. I pictured the ledger I had found in Marcus's drawer the night I broke the lock. A tally with corrections in his handwriting and a penciled numeric code on the margin. That ledger was why I had returned to the office after hours in the previous chapter. That ledger now sat under the lamp of my own conscience. I left the conference room with the envelope pressed under my arm because Julian did not demand I stay. The next morning I went to her. Sophia's office smelled of lemon hand soap and paper. She did not look up when I slid into the chair. She kept her expression careful and slow. I placed the payroll notification on her desk. "Sophia," I said, "Marcus's bonus posted to my account. Do you have a personnel file noting his resignation?" Sophia read the notification without surprise. "We show a resignation submitted last month." Her voice was small, practiced. "The file has been updated." I asked for timestamps. The document Sophia pulled up on her monitor had edits dated after Marcus' disappearance. My suspicion hardened into something like anger. "Who edited the file?" I demanded. Sophia's hands folded over the keyboard. "I don't have that authority to disclose that, Claire." Partner direction. That answer made the ledger in my bag feel like a live wire. I went to it. The server room hummed, and the air tasted faintly of ozone. The archive backup was locked behind credentials, but one of the junior techs, whom Rafael had once nudged me to trust, let me in because I pushed and because he owed Rafael a favor. I watched an extraction screen peel open voicemails, and then there it was. A message labeled with Marcus' number and a timestamp 3 days before he vanished. I hit play and listened to Marcus' voice say, "If they move that payout, the ledger will name them." "I can stay for that." The voicemail named the ledger as risk and hinted at someone inside the firm who could reroute money and paperwork. My suspicion tilted toward a cover-up. Emotion shifted again. Guilt, suspicion resolved to find the truth. I carried that voicemail to Rafael. He worked 2 desks over from Marcus' old seat and smelled of paper and stale coffee the way a person who sleeps at their desk does. When I told Rafael about the message, he looked at me like someone returning a book he'd been holding and discovered a torn page. Marcus argued with a partner a month ago. Refal, he showed me a small code on his wrist, a partial number. Marcus, he found an unexplained bonus in the ledger, and that it didn't belong to anyone in our group. Someone high up was making adjustments. Refal's voice stuttered on someone high up and his hands clenched around a mug. That detail matched the faint wrist tattoo description I had noted in Marcus' personnel sheet. Refal's testimony made the case visible beyond my own notes. Back at my desk, I spread Marcus's ledger across mahogany and traced the pencil corrections with my fingertip. The numbers looked neat until you compared dates. Lines had been rewritten with a different hand or a slightly firmer pressure. A stamped name appeared on a page I was certain Marcus had written before he disappeared. I recognized the way he rounded his sevens. Now I saw insertions beneath his handwriting. The ledger moved the mystery from a personnel oddity to potential malfeasance. Money being moved, signatures changed, and Marcus afraid enough to disappear. Julian called me to his office the next evening, and his offer was methodical. He closed his door and asked me to sit. He placed a business, card-thin folder on the table and opened it to reveal a quiet set of promises, reassignment, a modest promotion. An emphasis that my future here could look entirely intact if I handed over my copy of Marcus's ledger. "Give me the ledger, Claire," he said. "We can close this without upsetting clients." His words had two edges. Danger if I refused, reward if I complied. The moral pressure rose. My hands tightened around the envelope in my bag. That was another shift. Resolve flickered into doubt about the cost. I imagined what turning the ledger over would do to Marcus. Would it bury his concern or fix it? Would the funds be redirected back where they belonged, or would the file simply vanish? The offer smelled of salvage, but also of erasure. I asked Julian, "If I hand this over, you will investigate?" He smiled with only his mouth. "We will handle personnel matters internally. You will receive credit for bringing it to us." His answer avoided names. He used policy as a shield, and the shield felt like sandpaper against my skin. I started calling partners and pressing for more than the scripted replies. A partner named Lyle curtly that an internal review would address everything. Sophia in Har repeated the same careful language. Raphael grew nervous when he saw me on the trading floor and motioned for me to stop looking into Marcus's desk. "They don't want us poking, Claire," he said. This could be ugly. His warnings were another external event, another pressure point. The company began to close ranks. I scheduled a meeting with two partners, intentionally vague on the agenda, and asked them to come to the boardroom. I told Raphael and Sophia to attend. I told no one else. When the partners sat, I called the meeting to order and set my phone on the table. I hit play on Marcus's voicemail. His voice filled the room with the same flat panic he must have felt. "I can stay for that." Partners shifted in their chairs and Julian's jaw tightened. I placed the ledger between us so everyone could see the penciled code. "This ledger shows edits after Marcus disappeared," I said. Marcus feared a payout would expose someone. He called it out on the record. "We need answers." The room's energy changed. This was the pivot. Julian kept his calm for 2 minutes, and then those edges showed. He stood and said, "Claire, this is a personnel matter." "You should not have broken into a locked drawer," I replied. "You warned me not to raise it." "Now I'm raising it publicly because it matters to Marcus." The partners traded looks. They questions in the way people measure risk. "They who had seen the ledger," I said slowly. Raphael saw it. Sophia accessed the personnel edits. That was a revelation that forced the firm's hand, because it made the issue no longer mine alone. The argument that followed was sharp and rapid. "Julian to me. This damages clients. This damages us." Me to Julian. "Marcus could be gone because of this ledger," Raphael interjected. Marcus argued with a partner. He showed me the wrist code. "Sophia, files were edited after his disappearance." Partners more pointedly. "Who edited them?" I said. "We don't know yet. But there is voicemail and ledger evidence." The exchange had 3 rapid lines, names repeated in each turn to keep voices distinct. The partners paused because the evidence forced reputational choices. The boardroom turnout changed the power balance. Allies of Julian shifted away from his carefully built narrative. One partner asked Julian to explain the edits. Julian's controlled voice broke for a moment as he fended off direct questions. He gave a partial explanation about an internal correction and then refused to specify who authorized changes. Partners began to call counsel. Security stood at the threshold. A partner said quietly, "We will call for an independent audit." That statement altered the corridor of control inside the firm and moved the crisis outside Julian's sole discretion. Julian left the boardroom escorted by security 2 hours later. He did not shout or beg. Someone placed a folder on his desk at his floor with immediate effect. That removal was concrete. The firm's protective shield around him cracked, and then a clean hand closed over it. In the corridor, a partner told me to expect a drawn-out legal review and to take care with my statements. My name was both thanked and quietly cautioned. The balance of immediate danger eased, but the ledger's wider truth remained open. That evening I went back to Marcus' old desk. The trading bay had emptied. Fluorescent lights hummed. I closed my laptop and opened the drawer with my office key. I had to decide what to do with the bonus that had landed in my account. Julian had offered a bribe in effect, career movement in exchange for silence, but I did not want an empty victory. I counted the number from the bank notification on my phone. I wrote it down on a plain index card and placed it into an envelope. My hands still shook from the day's confrontation, but the shaking carried a new steadiness. Emotion shifted again, doubt to determination. I walked to the windowsill and remembered Marcus' voice in the voicemail. The fear threaded through a practical worry about the ledger. There was no heroic fantasy. There was a ledger and an amount. I thought of Raphael's face when he said Marcus had shown him the wrist code, and the way Sophia had avoided answering about timestamps. I thought of Julian's careful threat. I thought of the ledger and of the bank notification that had brought me here. I could hand the money back to the firm through official channels, but Julian had already shown how official channels could be bent. I could keep the money and let it become a quiet, private recompense, but that felt like theft by omission. I folded the envelope and addressed it to a fund Marcus had mentioned in conversation once, an education trust for a community center in his neighborhood. I did not know if Marcus had intended it or if he had wanted his bonus returned to the company. But in his voicemail he had spoken about a ledger that would name names, and that could ruin people who were doing something wrong. I placed the envelope into Marcus' drawer and pressed the wood closed with both hands. That act settled something at my core in a way speeches could not. It was not absolution. It was a tangible reparation tied to an actual person and an actual place. After I left the office for the night, a partner emailed a short note. An internal review would proceed, outside counsel was engaged, and employees should preserve documents. I replied in a measured line. "I will cooperate," Raphael texted me later. "Good work." Marcus would have wanted that. He added a photo of the trading bay with one desk light still on. Sophia sent a brief message. "We will need your full statement tomorrow." The firm was moving into procedure. It mattered less to me how the firm spun it than that an audit would call external eyes to the ledger. I did not see Marcus again. The firm announced an internal review and an audit that would take months. Julian's immediate influence diminished in the firm hierarchy, but he remained a partner with resources. Legal teams sifted through emails and database edits. Names surfaced and then quieted as counsel negotiated access. The ledger and the voicemail were now part of a formal process and not only my private burden. At twilight, I returned one final time to the empty trading bay. The city lights skimmed across the window, and the envelope sat inside Marcus' drawer where I had placed it. I tapped the drawer to confirm it was closed. My pulse had the familiar tap it did when I was nervous. That slow tap was now an indicator rather than a verdict. The guilt that had pushed me through Julian's conference room had softened into a cautious certainty that I had chosen something concrete, an act of restitution. I did not delude myself that it fixed everything. It did not locate Marcus or answer who had edited files. But it gave me a final, physical result I could point to when the firm asked why I acted. The chapter closed with legal notices and quiet departmental shifts. Partners debated, her replayed timestamps, it provided logs. Rafael continued to offer small pieces of information. Sophia answered fewer questions and offered more records. Marcus S. Ledger and his voicemail were central evidence in the audit and called for further investigation. My name was on formal statements and my actions had set these processes in motion. The firm could still attempt to contain or discredit the trail. But the public move toward outside counsel meant the ledger would be reviewed by eyes that Julian could not privately direct. I ended the night by returning to Marcus S. drawer one more time, not out of guilt, but because I wanted the last action of the chapter to be deliberate. I slid the envelope containing the bonus into his drawer and pressed the wood closed with both hands. The sound was a small finality, the drawer settling into place, and I left the office with the lights of Chicago reflecting on the glass. The ledger remained in evidence, the audit began, and the firm would have to answer questions it had long preferred to avoid. The immediate conflict, the choice Julian forced on me, had been resolved through public exposure and a private act of restitution. The door closed behind me with a soft click, and the night kept the three items that mattered: the ledger, the voicemail, and the envelope in Marcus S. drawer.